for CEOs and millionaires. I've never seen my vision be more crystal clear. Look in the mirror, see the change in who I used to be. I kept going, knew success would come eventually. But ask about me back then, they said I wouldn't make it. Nowadays they doubt less and tend to ask for favors. Poetic music, that's realness, don't let them tell you different. And if you ever lost in doubt, then follow your intuition. These words of wisdom is for those who's trying to find their purpose. Don't be living just to die, cause only death is certain. I'm working hard so I can toast to my accomplishments. Cause see, I lost it all and I ain't been the same since. I'm more focused, more ambitious, more everything. Grew up with nothing, now I appreciate the finer things. I know it's real when at the shows they ask for autographs. And now they know the name, they ain't gotta ask.
Have you conducted meetings like this?
Yeah, so we've done a few meetings like this. We had.
I've never been notified. Never.
So we have to make sure that you're getting the emails then, because, or I can send them to Ashley, that way that she can let you get on the meetings.
Call me. Yeah, I don't need an intermediary.
Okay. Either way.
Yeah, I've never gotten an email, and I've never talked to you directly, and you talk to Ashley, and I'm here.
Yeah, well, so Don got in touch, and then Don told me, and then that you were. Hold on one second.
Okay, as long as you get the job done.
Yeah, exactly. So how it kind of goes is we talk a little bit about, how you grew up a little bit, your military time, and then kind of what you did after. So that's kind of how we do the formatting. And so we'll just cut off, some of the audio and stuff here in a second. And then we'll just go from there. All right, continuing on with the podcast, my next guest is Marvin Myers, who's a former commander of the Jewish War Veterans Post 344. And Marvin lives in Denver currently and has been a member for many, many years. Welcome, Marvin.
Thank you.
So with this, we wanted to, if you could maybe we're going to talk about, your early part of life. So what year were you born, Marvin?
1930.
Wow. So you are about to be 91?
Coming up.
That's awesome.
I was a high school dropout at 17 and joined the Army Air Force.
Okay.
And when I got into the Army Air Force, they created the USAF. And so we were given a choice. Do you want to stay with the Army or do you want to go with the USAF? So I said, let's go with the USAF. So I went into the USAF, and I went into, as it turned out, I went into Air Force finance, and I was involved with payments to the GIs, to the relatives, and spent 4 years in the military and with accounting and dispersing. And I was at Lackland Air Force Base.
Okay. San Antonio,
Fort Sheridan, Illinois, Fort Francis E. Warren, and Cheyenne.
Okay.
And it was good duty all the way around. I never could get out of the United States. I kept volunteering to go overseas, but they said, we need you here.
Right.
So I didn't get to go.
Gotcha. And so what's your hometown, Marvin?
I was born and grew up in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
And World War II was on when I was 15, and we all felt that we had an obligation to serve our country. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I could go at 17, I went.
And do you remember the time during that time in your life where the country had to kind of ration, they had to not drive as much, they had to do different things during their time, during the wartime, to help support the war effort, right?
Well, they had gas rationing at that time,
Yeah.
but my family didn't have an automobile, so that didn't matter. And yeah, no, I grew up around a lot of the fellas that served during World War II,
Yeah.
some of them that were in action. And of course, when I went in the service, there was nothing going on. And I was in the service when the Korean War started.
Right.
And so,
And tell me a little bit about your family. So your parents, were they born in the U.S. or were they immigrants?
no, they were born in Chicago.
Okay. And then what did they do for work?
My father worked in maintenance for a company, and nothing spectacular, but he worked all the time.
Hmm.
And I remember talking to him that he made 25 cents an hour.
Wow. And this was
Big money.
This was in the 30s, like when you were growing up, or like later on?
No, he shared that with me in the 40s,
Okay.
early 40s.
Gotcha. And so your mom took care of the family, made sure everything was running good at the house?
Yeah, I was the only child.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so I went into the military, and when I was in service, I realized you weren't going anywhere unless you had an education.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I did when I got out of the service was to go to college, and that made a big difference.
And did anybody that you hung out with in your family, did they serve in World War II at all?
No, I had uncles that were in the service. One was a court reporter, and he took notes at all of the trials and was invited to go to the Nuremberg trials in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the chief court reporter for the Cook County, Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. And then, so you're in high school. Obviously, these guys from World War II are coming back. Did you felt compelled to serve? Did you drop out to serve, or was that just coincided?
I dropped out of high school at 17.
Mm-hmm.
I went into the service at 17.
Gotcha.
And I spent 4 years in the military. In fact, it was good service. I served with fellas that were in World War II.
And what ultimately led you, instead of like trying to go to work or maybe working with your dad, what led you to the military, even though you didn't come from a military family kind of background?
No, I felt the military was an important thing. I felt that we had an obligation to serve our country,
mm-hmm.
and we took it seriously. I had other buddies. We all went in the service at that time, and in fact, I volunteered for the Marines, but they rejected me on my left eye was not quite right. Mm-hmm. And then after I was in the service, I got a letter that we've reevaluated. We want you to come back to the Marines. But I was in the Air Force.
You might have made the better choice, or the choice might have been made for you.
I think the choice might have saved my life.
Yeah. And how did your parents take the news when you said you're going to go sign up for the military?
Well, we talked about it, and it wasn't a lengthy discussion. It was, if I felt this is what I wanted to do, they were going to support it.
Yeah.
But see, when I dropped out of high school, in the military, I was able to take the test and get my high school diploma from the school that I would have graduated from.
Gotcha.
So that worked out. And of course, in the service, I realized education was important. So when I came out, I went to the University of Denver and I got my bachelor's, my master's, and I got 2 years postgraduate work. So I spent 7 years at the University of Denver.
Wow. I just graduated with my MBA from University of Denver in November. So
Really?
we're alumni.
We're alumni. Yeah, I went to the campus out at Iliff and University.
University, yeah.
Right.
Did
It was good.
And when you were going to school at that time, so you were in the military from Korean War time, so like mid-50s is when you went to school?
47 to 51.
Okay, that's your military time. When did you start going to DU?
A year after,
Okay.
in 52, because there was not a GI Bill like they had for World War II vets. We got a GI Bill in 52, and it was not comparable at all.
Really? Wow. Did service members fight that and try to get more benefits because of that, or was it just kind of it is what
Never
it is?
happened.
Yeah.
It was,
And did you, when you were at the university, did you feel that they treated veterans well?
well, there were when I went to the university, there were a lot of veterans from World War II there,
Yeah.
and I just melded right in with them, and I felt that everybody was treated fine. I didn't see any special treatment.
That's great because they really strive to help the military veterans out at the campus. I did the online program, so I wasn't able to go to campus that much, but the staff and the professors, everybody was super excited to have veteran presence in the classes and everything. So it's great to hear that this has been going on at University of Denver for like 50 plus years.
Well, the veterans made a considerable number of, there were a considerable number of veterans at the university, and it was certainly appreciated. But as I said, the GI Bill was absolutely not like it was for World War II. It was very meager and couldn't get it increased.
And what did you study while you were there?
Special education.
Okay.
Got my bachelor's, my master's in special education, and my doctoral work was all done in special education.
That's great. And so when you left university, what did you do afterwards as far as job, as far as everything else?
Well, I'm trying to think here because there were a number of things that happened.
Yeah. So
After I left the university, I had a number of small jobs, and then I was able to become a member of the Denver Public Schools faculty.
okay. Gotcha.
So I work with special education there, and I was at the University of Denver clinic where I worked with children with learning disabilities that were brought there. And so that's where I got more involved with the disabled.
Yeah. And what led you to want to work in that field?
Say again?
What led you to want to work in that field?
Well, I'd seen a number of people that had disabilities, had an uncle that was paralyzed on the right side. And so that left quite an impression. And I thought I could help people, and I did.
No, that's great. I commend, obviously you've done so much with your life. I really admire you and a lot of the guys, especially the guys that I've interviewed so far, because each person's story is quite unique. But one thing that is similar is the continuation of service even after your military time. And I think that's the common bond that we all have. And so it's always interesting to hear what motivates us to keep going in that sense. So, so you're in Devon Public Schools. When did you, so you were active obviously in the community as you were working in the public school system. Were you always involved in Jewish philanthropy and Jewish, organizations that were serving the community at the same time, or did that come later in life?
No, it came very early. I joined the AZA, which was the Zodic Aleph organization for young boys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was with a lot of people that had a strong Jewish background. And in fact, I took a month and I went to Israel with that group.
Okay.
And we were volunteers over there.
And what year was that? Do you remember? Or how old were you?
Well, I'm trying to think now. It was in the 60s.
Oh, wow. Interesting time both in the U.S. and in Israel at that time.
Well, yes, it was. And in Israel, there was always concern about Arabs attacking
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
Yeah.
There was great concern about that.
And did you when you went over there, was that your first time to go to Israel?
No, I went to Israel 8 times.
Before that time in the 60s?
From then on.
Oh, okay, gotcha. But that was your very first time going with that group.
Yeah. And we melded in with the Israelis, those of us that were volunteers.
Yep.
And we wore the Israeli uniform.
And what was your first impression like when you came to Israel? Like, tell me if you can remember. Tell me the feeling that you had as you got off the plane. You kind of acclimated to, obviously the desert, the heat, the environment there. What were some of the thoughts, if you can remember, on when you first got there?
Well, I thought it was quite a wonderful experience that I was having because Israel had fought hard to achieve independence,
mm-hmm.
and they got away from the British at that time.
Yeah.
And now when I look back, there was a strong sense of loyalty that everybody had over there. And there was a great concern about the Arabs coming in from Jordan. And I haven't thought about this in a long time. But everything worked out very well.
And then with the volunteering, what did they have you guys do?
Well, when we volunteered, they made it clear that our volunteering was saving the state of Israel from having to call up people. So it saved them a lot of money. And
where did you volunteer? Do you remember the town or the base or anything? And like where you were at?
We were in the north.
Okay.
And I don't recall the town's name.
That's okay.
Yeah,
did you
that's
get
a good question.
Did you get to do you get to see the Sea of Galilee?
See what?
Did you get to see the lake?
Oh, well, when you volunteered over there, they went all out to see that the volunteers had an opportunity to see all of Israel. Mm-hmm. So we traveled around Israel quite a bit, and that was part of the program.
Okay.
But as I say, we worked closely with the Israelis. As a volunteer, we wore the uniform. They didn't want us to be in any dangerous situations.
Yeah.
As volunteers, and it was good. It was good.
Did you guys meet anybody like kind of important or in particular with the program? Did you meet any like?
Well, we met Benjamin Netanyahu, who was, if you're well aware of Israel, he became the prime minister, and then there was a prime minister before Benjamin Netanyahu, and I can't think of his name, a short guy, and met him. And then we were invited to the homes of Israelis, and it was a nice experience.
I can imagine. I really love it there too. It kind of gives me structure. You know, I have friends and folks there that I really like and care for, and you know, it's not the easiest neighborhood to live in, to say the least. So, and so when you got back, you're active in the community. You're active in Denver public school systems through your programs.
Bnai Brith.
You were part of Bnai Brith? Okay.
I was president of Bnai Brith here in Denver.
Okay.
And oh yeah,
I didn't know that. I mean, you have such a long laundry list of accolades here. I didn't know all of them. So, so Bnai Brith. I mean, you've worked with the Federation for years. Jewish war veterans. Anything else?
I'm sure that there is. It made all of these activities really helped in the community, but it made life more meaningful for those of us that made ourselves available.
Yeah.
And there were a few others that did as well. And one of the fellows that was in the Jewish war veterans that I worked closely with, Larry Wolfson, he was on the second wave of the invasion of Normandy. Okay. And so we talked about that. A lot of interesting people. And when I went into the Jewish war veterans, the commander then was George Steinberg. And George Steinberg provided some effective leadership.
And so you come back in the 60s there, you're working in, you know, the public sector, so to speak. Can you maybe talk about, if you can remember, the 60s and kind of maybe how that shaped you as far as the civil rights movement and other things that were going on during that time? Do you remember that time like pretty well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so like, let's take it back to maybe the beginning, right? The Kennedy assassination and what that impacted our country and how that went. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that and like what you were feeling during that time and just the general perception of the country and how they were dealing with things?
Everybody was quite concerned when Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Yeah.
And
and how did the Denver community take that as far as, because Denver's always been kind of, they're not really the South, they're not really East Coast, you know, they have a very kind of West Coast ideology as far as the way they think, but small town values, I guess I would say. And so
Denver was hardly a small town, but I will say that trying to think of something here.
And how long have you lived in Denver now? Since you went to school, basically?
48
Yeah. Wow.
on. Yeah. And there was something I wanted to get out here.
We were talking about Martin Luther King and the Kennedy assassination.
I think got into the Denver public schools to teach special education, and we work with children with special needs, but we also work with the parents to help them to understand their child's limitations.
Right.
It was important because some parents were very accepting and some parents were not accepting of that they had a child that had issues.
Yeah. And was that a difficult job to have in that time frame? Because I don't think most people, they didn't value the health care in the same way, I think, as far as like with disabilities. And was it tough trying to convince parents, like the techniques and things that you learned in school and what you learned about?
When you work with their children, you maintain ongoing contact with the family to help them to accept their child's limitations. And so that was part of the job. And the other part was working with some of the teachers who were not very accepting. There was those teachers that were wonderful that you worked with, but some of them, they didn't see any value in working with children that had mental issues. They said you're working with these retards, and we made it very clear that these were youngsters that had potential, and we were going to help them all we could.
Yeah.
See, it's an attitude that it was part of my training and my background to be accepting of people with limitations.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely understand. I've been supporting off and on a program in Israel called Krembo Wings. And it's a after-school program where teenagers of kids that have disabilities that are generally the same age, like teenager age, where they just get together to have fun and play. And so the teenagers that are volunteers, they have to get accepted into the program, and then they go through some of the training that you're talking about, and then they just hang out with the kids with disabilities to play and just have some kind of normal life, because the medical facilities, the treatments, everything is there from the medical perspective, but they just don't have that social life. And so this program started a youth movement, they call it, a couple years ago, like actually probably over a decade ago now. And bringing people together from all walks of life, I think, is a very special thing. They have Lud is the sister city of Denver for the Federation. And so with that, the Lud community is mixed. It has Arabs, it has everybody. And what I like about it is that it when you have a kid with a disability, it doesn't matter what your background is. You all are feeling the same issues at the same time. And so when I was there, the program really impacted me because of the learning perspective for them from both ends. And just to see the relief on parents' faces when they get to leave their kids with friends to go and just have an hour to themselves, where you see an Arab parent talking with somebody with a kippah on, like that's a special moment, I think, where it's in Lud, Israel. So
And where?
in Lud is right by the airport there.
Okay.
So
We found that as we work with youngsters with learning disabilities, that normal, whatever that may be, children helped. They mentored those who were not as capable, and that made a big difference.
Mm-hmm. And so how long were you in the public school system?
In Denver,
Yeah.
5 years in Denver, and then I taught some courses at the University of Colorado and University of Northern Colorado in special education.
Mm-hmm.
Did that for a while, but
And so when did you kind of officially retire from teaching?
I stayed with that for some time.
And when you retired, obviously you definitely still were involved from a volunteer basis, with the veterans community, with the Jewish community. Where does that desire to keep going, where did it come from for you? Did it come from family? Did it come from your experiences?
It's something that came from the time you were a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
When you work with other people and you got a lot of satisfaction out of seeing people, whether they were capable or less capable, see them do better or get them involved in the volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we got people to help in volunteering, they never thought about it or didn't know that avenue was open.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes people just have to be shown the way, and then the rest of it takes care of itself. Yeah, I mean, Marvin, you're the reason that I'm part of the Jewish Community Relations Council for the veterans. Your demonstration of giving back is really impactful, at least to me and most likely to many people. And so, I really appreciate you for, holding the torch and hoping that other folks would follow you and take the lead after you guys have done quite a bit for the community and can still continue to want to be a part of the community in some capacity. It really means a lot to be a part of the collective and keep some of these things going. So I really thank you for that.
You have to get a lot of satisfaction out of helping people or seeing to it that you get the community involved in one way or another. And some people never realized that the opportunity to do that was available.
Right.
And so we saw a lot of good things happen as a result.
Yeah, and in your your last part of the volunteering aspects, if you can recall, what's been the most satisfying, if you can recall any kind of specific events or moments that just stick out to you as like, wow, I really made a difference today? Like either with the Jewish war veterans, with Bnai Brith, with whatever you can think of. Do you have any examples
It's
of?
always a part of my life.
Yeah.
So I never thought of it as being something exceptional.
Right.
It was something that I and others did. And it was not like we overextended ourselves. It was just part of a normal flow of activities that we got involved with. As I said, I started with AZA, which was the Jewish Youth Organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably about 13 at the time. It was inculcated quite early.
Did your parents push you to try to go to those kind of organizations, or was that just something that you kind of migrated to?
No, that's something that I did. My parents were not involved in volunteering like I was.
Yeah.
They were supportive.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed about your demographic is that a lot of folks, they got involved in the nationalism side of things, and then that, you know, came into play as like joining the military, you know, like afterwards. So, trying to think. So, do you have kids or a family?
I have 4 children.
Yeah.
2 of them are gone. One is a eye surgeon that does plastic surgery, and I have a daughter that teaches music.
Wow. And they're in Denver as well, or are they kind of spread out?
Both. My son is in Longmont, and my daughter is in Highlands Ranch.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and they became involved in a good deal of community work.
No, that's great. Well, they had a really amazing example to follow. So, yeah. So, what advice would you have for somebody? Because I think obviously times have changed, right? We have a younger generation that I think wants to be involved, but might not have the financial means or the time to be involved as much as they would like. What would you recommend to younger people that want to be part of a community, but they're simply just trying to make it right now in a sense of, you know, surviving, trying to get established, maybe get a house, that kind of stuff? What would you recommend for somebody like in their late 20s, 30s that wants to be involved?
I think there has to be a recognition that you have something to give.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to be a part of your life. I think that people who never had the experience get involved because of friends.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're involved with an organization and I know you and you invite me to come and I go. And you have to make the opportunity available. Some people know about these things and a lot of people don't.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You know, expectations, and you have to make the time and the effort. Basically, there's always, you know, if you don't have the treasure, you definitely have the time and most likely have the talent. So, as far as getting something done, that's up to them, and we'll see how it goes. You know.
Well, I think that growing up as a Jewish boy, I recognized that there was a need to give something back and that it was important to be involved. And these organizations became a vehicle by which I could be involved Jewishly.
Yeah.
To me, it was very important.
And with everything that's happened here recently, what are your thoughts on the current situation in the U.S. as far as the rise of anti-Semitism, the bipolarization of the country? You've lived a long time. Have you felt the country in this way, the way it feels right now, before, at any point in time in your life?
I think that anti-Semitism will always be there. Because there are people who don't know any better, that don't understand. I remember when I was in high school talking to a classmate, and I don't know how it came up. He said, "I don't like Jews." And I said, "Why?" He said, "My father told me not to." And I thought that was an interesting comment. This is back
in the 40s.
in the 40s.
Yeah.
And I never heard that before. But when I was in the service, I never experienced any anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
I found that there were people that were very respectful. In fact, there was one person that said, "You come from a very ancient and important group in our lives, Judaism." Well, if you had a job to do in the military, you were accepted on the basis of what you were able to do.
Mm-hmm.
They never ask anybody how old you are. You got the assignment. There were people that I remember when I was in the service, it seemed like most of the guys with me were from rural areas.
Yeah.
And some of them had never met anybody that was Jewish, and it was no big deal. They're very accepting.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so what, as the last couple weeks, have transpired, what have you been thinking, in general about, first off, the election, and then secondly, just, the stuff that happened at the Capitol? I'd love to get your input on that.
Well, this is certainly not a political discussion. I'm very pleased that we have a president who is very optimistic, very caring person, and I think that he's going to do a great job. I think that it's important that all citizens support their congressmen, congresswomen.
Mm-hmm.
There are opportunities there for volunteering, for assisting, and I have worked with many of the representatives over the years, and that was a great experience to help them so that they could achieve what they wanted to. And I think that we're living at a time when there are many challenges, and the opportunity is certainly there to help our elected officials, whoever you may believe in, achieve the goals that help the citizens.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, as long as you're active in your community, and being an active constituent, I think is imperative to the success of the country. It's when we stop as people caring about each other and the institutions that have been through everything there and back. That's when we start to have problems, because we are not holding each other accountable in the manner that we should be.
I think that you're absolutely correct. And the important thing is your vote and who you support and the issues that you are supporting. And I think whatever we do, we certainly want to do the best we can so that all citizens benefit from our democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's imperative for our future success and endeavors on a global scale to prove that, yes, democracy can be messy, but it's still the best thing going. And you want to be a part of this, whether it's in your own backyard or here in our country. I think that still holds true today. As you know, like when you travel, you get to see how other people are living around the world and seeing their life and what that entails on the day to day. And I can honestly say, like, I've been around the world, and generally America's still in the top tier countries to live in, and people just need to utilize winning that lottery ticket and really challenging themselves to be better people first, but then also to take chances, because America offers you multiple times to fail and you can still succeed, and in other places you have one shot and that's it. And so
Very well said. And I think that there are many people like myself, others, that really want to see the best that we have to give. And I think that it's important to get youngsters involved in some way meaningfully.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's where some of us got our first experiences, working with role models.
Yeah. Sports, youth groups, things of that nature, to kind of build kind of a team spirit, esprit de corps, as they say. That way that I think moving forward, I think that your generation has done amazing things. For some reason, the people behind you have disappointed, and I'll just be honest, in a sense of not relinquishing control of the country and of positions within our institutions. The fact that we have presidents that are running now that are in their 70s, I don't know, it might be a little troubling for me personally to see people in a high stressful job of that nature to want to stay around and pushing 80 years old almost. I just don't think it's good for the country, because we need new ideas. We need new initiatives that come from the bottom driven tiers of society. And we got to do better at getting those people up into positions of influence.
But it's very important that we have those people with the experience, and even from the present leaders, bring in younger people and mentoring them and bringing them in because they have a track record of community service one way or another. I would never dismiss anybody because they're older. I think that the opportunity is there and everybody has a chance to make a contribution. And
I agree with that. I just, for me personally though, I think that, we had a general understanding in our society that people generally retired around 65, 70. That doesn't exist in the same way anymore. And so what's happening is that within our hierarchy, we're becoming stagnant because the people that are at the top of our hierarchy in our communities aren't stepping down to allow others to flourish in those positions.
But I think you have to take a good look. What are they doing? They're not preventing people from rising up. I think that older people are looking to younger people frequently.
Yeah, I mean, you would know in a different perspective than me. That's just my, general consensus on what I've seen within our own community, is that people generally aren't stepping down from, companies, organizations, nonprofits, things of that nature, and allowing others to gain that experience in that same way.
Right. But you don't want to hold on forever. You certainly need to help others to rise up and to participate meaningfully.
Yeah.
I think what's happening out in the States now, I think you're seeing younger people, governors that are younger. You're seeing congressmen that are younger. So they're coming in. It's there. I notice it all the time.
It ebbs and flows. I have a friend of mine who's potentially going to run for Congress. So, and we're in our 40s. So, I'm hopeful. I just think you guys, your generation, kind of bowed out a little bit more gracefully, in a sense of like, we did what we could. All right, the next people in line, go ahead and handle this. And we're going to enjoy. Say again.
There's a transition. that occurs.
Exactly. And you guys handled it a lot better than the generation behind you, because the generation behind you is still in power.
Well, the generation behind me were products of the Depression,
Mm-hmm.
people who didn't have the opportunities for education because they had to go out and work,
Yeah.
and they made it possible for the next generation to achieve some success. I think if you take a good close look at a lot of the older leaders, that they came from a background of having opportunities to succeed, and so they passed that on to others. I grew up, and it was always made very important that education was essential, that it was very important, because if you took everything away from somebody, you couldn't take their education away, that the education would be there so that they could get ahead.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I just think it's, with school being so expensive now, I think it might be a little bit more difficult to get to that point, where you're not in a constant struggle to make ends meet and pay off those loans in a reasonable amount of time. I just think that we got to kind of reevaluate some of our logic, moving forward to allow those opportunities that you're speaking of.
Well, tuition has gone up considerably over the years. When I was at the University of Denver, it was nowhere where it's at now. I think I could go to school for a quarter,
Yeah.
3 months for $15.
Oh, wow.
And then later it went up into the thousands. And so there are opportunities for assistantships, opportunities to get into a work study program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the universities are becoming cognizant that they have to do something to assist, not necessarily financially, but to help people to get ahead.
Yeah, no, it's very apparent, and just having graduated, I can honestly say that it's a very big issue for the university, especially DU, right? They just started a MBA program online to allow people like myself who are working professionals to be able to go back to school and still have the connections that we have in that same facet, to be able to build that DU alum community in a different way. And so I commend the university for looking a little bit differently out there and being able to provide brand recognition, so to speak, to people like myself that it might not have been there otherwise. If I had to quit my job and go to school for 2 years, I don't think it would have been possible.
You did your work on with the computer?
Everything. Yeah. Everything was online. So we had classes online like we're talking now. And
Yeah,
then,
we didn't have any of that.
No.
None of that was there. And the one thing, there are opportunities if you could establish a relationship with some of the professors, and there were assistantships where you could help, but then that was not widespread. That was for a small number of people who would work for the university through the professors, and that would take care of some of the tuition monetarily. There was never a heck of a lot there.
Yeah, no, it you have to like you mentioned before, you have to work at creating your opportunities. And I think a lot of people have been given a lot from their parents because obviously their parents care for them and they're not used to going out there and fighting for something on their own, at least from what I've seen. And
Well,
so
that's a very good point you raise, because if I wanted to go to the university, that was my responsibility,
yeah,
not my parents.
yeah,
And you look to see what opportunities were there, like assistantships, working for the university as I did for $1 an hour
yeah,
at DU. That goes back quite some time.
yeah. And you and I'm sure you felt a sense of agency in your education because you took those steps to move ahead. You know, you weren't afraid to maybe take 2 steps back to go 5 steps forward as far as your education was concerned.
Well, I think there's something to what you say there. When I went to the University of Denver for 7 years, I did not belong to any fraternities. I didn't get involved in any of the social activities. I was there to get the education, to be able to get a good job later.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the case with a lot of people, because when I was going to school, I had guys that were in fraternities talking about all the parties and good things that they were doing, and that was completely foreign to me. I listened to them, but I did my own thing, and it was important.
Do you feel the military made you grow up faster and you just were a different person by the time you got there?
Well, the one thing the military did, which was important, you got a good deal of responsibilities, and you had to deliver. Were you in the military?
Yeah, 12 years.
There you go.
Yeah, it was.
I was 5, and the one thing that you learned is you're judged by getting the job done and being supportive of those who you were with. Now, the military for me was a good experience.
And with that, after the military, did you keep in touch with anybody that you were in the military with?
No,
No.
because the fellows were dispersed. No, I didn't.
Yeah. And so you came to school or you came to Denver strictly for school?
No. I came to Denver in 48. I went into the military, met my future wife here, and I decided Denver was very nice, very pleasant place to live.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then I got my teaching certificate, and I went into teaching in the Denver public schools. And
so how did you meet your wife?
well, she was in BBG, Bnai Brith Girls,
Okay.
and I in AZA, which was the male counterpart,
Mm-hmm.
Aleph Sadik Aleph. So that's where I met her.
Okay. And she's from Chicago or she's from Denver?
Denver.
Okay. Got it. And what made you think that she was the person you wanted to marry? Did you know like in the beginning, or did it just kind of come slowly?
Well, the chemistry became apparent,
I like how you're smiling when you're talking about it. It's endearing. And
Yeah,
then
she's long gone, but yeah, you feel comfortable with people,
yeah.
and she became very important to me.
Yeah. And so was she with you during the military as well or afterwards?
She was with me for part of the military toward the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never asked her to marry me. I asked her if she'd be the mother of my children.
Oh yeah? Why did you say it differently?
What's that?
Why did you say it differently?
No, it came out that way.
Oh yeah. Did she look at you kind of funny, or was she happy about everything?
She thought it was good.
Yeah.
She thought it was fine. We had a Jewish fraternity here in Denver. It doesn't exist, at least it didn't exist the last time I heard. It was on University Boulevard. It was a few blocks away from DU.
Okay.
I visited there once or twice, and I decided I didn't want to be. None of them had been in service, and they were in for the social activities. I was there to get the education, to get a job, and to move on. And that's what I did. Perspective was completely different.
Yeah. Do you know any Yiddish?
Abyssal.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say you were there. You were the Yiddish Kopf.
Well, that would be part of it. No question about it. You know, we're all influenced by the people we're with, by the jobs that we have, the results that we achieve. And I was with a lot of good people over the years. In the military, my colonel was a tech sergeant when Pearl Harbor happened, and 2 weeks later he was a captain. And so he was good to be with. Had a lot of good people when I look back.
Yeah. And then was it a tough sell for your wife to join you? I mean,
Again,
was it a tough sell to talk to your wife to join you while you were in the military still? I mean, moving away from home obviously was a big deal back then. And
no, we were going to get married, and we were married out at Lowry Air Force Base.
oh, okay.
And no, we were married in my last year of military service.
Got it.
And we were married at the chapel out at Lowry, which, by the way, has since been moved, and it's over there in the community center. There's a white building, and that was the chapel that we had. In fact, when we were married at the chapel on the base, we had all of the Christian
Did you wear your uniform at the wedding?
no.
No.
When we were married, I didn't wear the uniform.
Okay. It's a free suit, you know. You didn't have to buy a tux then.
But the Christian chaplains came to the wedding probably out of curiosity.
Oh yeah.
And my outfit at Lowry, very interesting. They all chipped in, and as a surprise, I was presented with an enormous set of pots and pans since we were going to set up housekeeping.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always fun when my dad was in the Army as well, and so I grew up around moving a lot, and just always remember those moving boxes. I've been in Denver longer in Colorado than I ever have anywhere else, and I kind of like that.
You were what we would have called a military bred.
That is me. Yeah, I didn't intend on joining, to be honest, but like you, I saw a big difference in, how people were treated with education and without.
Right.
And I needed to figure out something. And so I felt military was a good option, and tried that out for a little bit. And then when things just weren't as interesting anymore, I wanted to try and pursue other opportunities. That's when I left after 12 years.
Did you get opportunities to travel?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm from Germany originally. So my first duty station was in Germany. So I got to go back for 2 years.
Okay.
I was in Kosovo. I was deployed to Iraq 5 times. Went to Africa once. So I've been around.
I couldn't get out of the States.
No? You were too important. You're too important.
Need you here.
Yeah. You gotta account for everything, You gotta make sure everybody gets paid on payday activities, right?
No, that was part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, people laugh. I was one of the first people to do electronic payments when I came in the 90s. So
really?
They still had payday activities a couple years before that, where people would get the checks and on payday and then go pay bills, and then you'd have a half a day to go and run errands and everything else.
Yeah, electronically was great. Everything we did was by hand.
Yeah, I'm sure your ledgers were a little thick back then.
I will say, for me, the military was a good experience. For some people, the military was not a good experience. Some people got killed. Some people were wounded. I wasn't in the infantry. I was in the Air Force, and so we didn't have that exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, and I think it's human to question, after conflicts are over, if it was really justified, if it really was worth it or not, because of the true sacrifice we as people have to pay in order to promote our values and our ideals, to the world.
Unquestionably. I have friends that I get with periodically that were in Vietnam. They were younger than me. That were wounded.
Yeah.
They were hurt badly. And so I've been a strong supporter of the VA because I think they do an incredibly wonderful job. In fact, I use the VA periodically, and I think all veterans should sign up for whatever the VA could provide if you needed it.
Yeah.
Because they have a lot of things that they make available, and you're paying for it as a citizen.
No, I agree. I go to the VA most times as well. I mean, even though the appointments are a little longer, if you can plan it out a little bit, then it works out pretty decent. It's just if you need to go there for something small, like right away, it's probably not the best option, unfortunately. But we'll get there. I'm optimistic.
Well, and that's important. We all have to be optimistic because that's what helps drive us forward. And the VA provides innumerable services to the veterans, and I'm very pleased about that because we've worked hard to make sure that the VA would be able to deliver. In fact, there's no limitation on the funds that are needed for veterans from Congress.
Absolutely.
The money is there for whatever the VA needs. And if you're a disabled veteran, there's other benefits for you.
Yeah.
And one, take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
When I look back, I'm probably among the very, very few of the guys that I grew up with that went in the service. And so I lost contact with the people I grew up with. But when I did meet with them, none of them ever went in the service.
And why do you think that is? I mean, did you went back to Chicago every now and then, or to go visit family and stuff, or?
Oh yeah, well, my parents lived in Chicago,
Yeah.
so I visited. And after I was in Chicago about 3 months, I realized I wanted to go back to Denver where I was stationed here because I got to know the city. I felt very comfortable. The weather was great. I had the mountains there, and it was a terrific place to live. So that made a difference, and I think that and I lost contact with the people that I grew up with, which were very important to me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't have the same experiences, of course, any more than I had your experiences or you had mine.
Yeah. And so
Terry provided wonderful opportunities for many of the guys and, of course, now the women. When I went in the service, there were very few whacks in the service. Very, very, very few. And the people that I served with when I went in, and I was mentored by a number of people. These were World War II vets.
Yeah.
Many of whom experienced the trauma of battle. Some who had been wounded. But I never heard any negatives from these guys.
Yeah, complaining wasn't really an option back then.
Never complained about anything. And of course, I thought the military was great. As I told you earlier, I went in at 17, and to me, it was a wonderful adventure.
Yeah.
At 17.
So thinking back in your life and everything that's happened, and what would you recommend to youngsters today? You're talking about adventure. You're talking about, many things here. If you were doing it over again, what would you recommend people try in their life moving forward, knowing what you know now?
For me, I can't think of doing anything differently. But today there are more opportunities available for young people.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a realization that without an education, you will not go anywhere. You have to get an education and perhaps prepare for yourself for some field of endeavor. There were few opportunities. If I didn't go in the service, which was at 17, and I've thought about it, I'm not sure what I would have done, because the education bug didn't get to me until I was in the military, and I realized you're going nowhere without an education. And that's when I took all the tests. My original high school issued me my diploma, and then when I was in service, I got my bachelor's and master's degree, and things can work out, but you have to persevere.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think you hit it on the head. I just finished my master's at 40, so if a dumb Army guy like me can do it, other people have a shot.
Say that last part again. You got shot?
No, I said if a dumb Army guy like me can go to grad school at 40 years old, I think other people have a shot to succeed.
Yeah. Well, when I went to school at DU, there were older fellows there in their 50s,
Mm-hmm.
had been in the military. They had the opportunity to go to school, and they went. And sometimes people go to school not necessarily for career opportunities. It was going for satisfaction of having achieved a degree.
Right. Yeah, the delayed gratification of completing something that is something that you can't replicate, because it's not something where you can study overnight and then, okay, over the weekend you have something. It's something that is a semi-long-term pursuit of betterment. And folks that go through that process, I think, have a greater understanding of commitment and that constant want to learn, even after you get out of school. I'm sure after even 7 years, you were always learning. You were always reading and updating your craft, so to speak, on the things that you wrote about and using that trial and error in the field. I'm sure you contributed a lot more afterwards than you ever did while you were learning in school.
This is true. Going to school helps to give you some of the tools that you need so you can pursue further endeavors. But, depends what you took in school. And, the opportunity to make presentations, the opportunity to prepare material, and that was very good for the military. And going to Israel, I found that the attitude on the Israelis is really no different than what it was here for us.
In what way? What do you mean by that?
Educationally.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So get some experience in the military, move on, start to learn and kind of create your life by figuring out what you want to do. And then
the one thing about the military that made a big difference is that whatever it is that had to be done, you had to do it right. And you had to stay with it till you got it done. And
very true. There's no clocking out at 5, right?
Yeah. I'm sure you can identify with that.
Very much so. I may not have the aptitude as other people do, but I'll outwork you. I know that, as far as other people around me. So, and I think that's a testament to, personal fortitude and also just having a mindset of knowing what you want and knowing that it's a process and you're not going to be successful overnight.
Sure. And what was your assignment in the military?
So I started off, I was a dental assistant. I wanted to be a dentist when I started out. I went into the profession and got stationed at my first unit and then was assigned to like a combat support hospital, and I hated it. So I went and I tried out for Green Berets, and then I did that for the last 10 years of my career.
And you retired out of the military?
No, I only did 12 years. I got out after 12 years.
That should have been worth something on the retirement arrangement.
No, not anymore. Maybe before, but 12 years is not enough. You need the They were giving out 15-year retirements at some point, but most of the time it's 20 years. So.
Okay. Well, the military was quite an experience. Met a lot of great people. I never had any complaints about being in the service. There's always something you don't like,
Yeah.
but by and large, it worked out well. And if anything, the one thing in the military, if you had a job to do, damn it, you did it. You got it done.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Marvin, it's been a pleasure.
Well, it has been nice. I got to think about some things I hadn't thought about in a long time. Maybe you should have had a cheat sheet with items on there that we would cover, but that's all right.
You know, I think you winged it pretty good. I'm in amazement how much you remember at 90 years old. I hope I can remember as much as you do.
Well, we've never had any dementia in my family. And I think about a lot of these things every once in a while. And personally, I feel that whatever I did, I delivered it, got it done. And I met a lot of wonderful people.
And I feel you really made a difference for many people in their lives, from the kids that you helped in schools, the other people that, you helped along the way to jump into the same career you had. Always giving back is generally what I've seen from us talking here in the last, hour plus.
Well, that's part of the satisfaction that you acquire. Because when you do something good, you feel good. And if you help somebody, you're going to feel good about that. And if you can help somebody else, that's even better. It's a multiplier effect.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You definitely gave me a lot to think about. We'll definitely be in touch once I edit the audio and everything else. I'll be sure to blast it out to you so you can send it to your friends and family and whatnot so they can hear. Maybe they
cut out.
What's up?
You've got a lot to cut out.
Nah, you'll be fine.
No, I'm glad we had the opportunity here. And I think what you're doing is great. I think that you probably have as much or more to contribute than I've expressed here today. I think the opportunities today are much greater than they were when I was younger. And I think people need to recognize that there are things that are going on that they need to take advantage of. And the one thing that I think that was so important is that whatever you do, you want to do it right, you want to complete it, and you also want to see if you can help people along the way. And that's what I always did.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I'm one of your folks, that stepped up and try to represent us as veterans in the community and just try to be a good example for others. And you're definitely a part of that. So I appreciate you and I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I hope you don't have too much to edit out, because I think there's a lot of things that probably could go out and not take away from the meaning of the discussion.
I think we're fine. I think people will love it for what it is. And if they don't, screw them.
Now, if you don't mind my asking, what is it you do out in the community here?
So I'm part of the JCRC.
Okay.
And so I represent the veterans with that. So I've been to Israel one time with the legislators in 2017, and hopefully we plan to go again in this year.
I was on the trip with the legislators.
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was no different than any other time. It was an eye-opener for them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
A very moving experience, to say the least. I started a nonprofit with a buddy of mine, and we contribute to that organization, Krembo Wings, and also the Derek Eretz pre-army program in Nitzana in Israel. We sponsor 2 kids to go through the pre-army program. And then on a side kind of thing, I'm into helping veterans transition from my unit. And so some friends and I are working on just doing a once a month talk down in Colorado Springs for any of the people from my unit that are getting out, that are looking to pursue other interests besides government work. So investment banking, consulting management, project management, things that I think that their skills would correlate and transition over relatively easy. It's just a matter of getting the credentials and getting the education to be able to be value added in the eyes of employers and things of that nature. And I think it's just so vast that I think people just need a little bit of guidance in that. And so we're trying to provide that.
Well, in Colorado Springs, are you working with veterans down there?
Yeah, so it's a very informal network of people from my unit that are stationed at Fort Carson.
So you still have an affiliation with the unit down there?
Yeah, my unit, 10th Group Special Forces, is out of Colorado Springs. So I have new folks, people that are retiring. You know, everybody's there, and a lot of people end up staying in Colorado, just like you, where it's just like, this is an amazing place. I want to, keep my roots here. And so if you want to stay and live in an area that does have a high government service, rate as far as DOD, that kind of stuff, or working for other agencies, the space programs and things like that, you still need to go through that process. But some people would like to work something else, and try to challenge themselves in another industry or another sector. And so we kind of help facilitate that as far as looking out there and seeing what's out there. So, working with...
When you say we try to facilitate that, who's the we?
Just myself and a couple of friends that have retired or, been around, and they've been successful in that transition. So, yeah.
Good.
Just like you were talking about before, the mentoring aspect, being like, hey, we're here. Just call, text, email, whatever. And if you need some guidance on which way to go, then that's kind of what we provide.
Good. Now, the people that you're helping, they're not all Jewish.
No.
No, I didn't think so.
No. You guys are the only Jewish veterans I know. I met 2 my whole time in the service, so.
When I was in service, there were very, very few Jewish guys. Very few.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, at the chapel on Friday, one of the guys, Jerry Haber from New York, and I conducted Friday night services. And we probably get 15 people there. That was about it. And I got out of the military. He stayed in and retired as a lieutenant colonel. And yeah, he made a career out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, good times. I mean, it's funny. Most of my friends are either ex-military or Jewish. Those are my two groups of friends.
Yeah.
And so
well, if you go to a Jewish war veterans meeting, there might be a dozen guys there. There's a few that have had extensive experience in the military, but they're there being supportive of the Jewish war veterans.
Yeah.
Because the guys that started the Jewish war veterans are long gone. I still support them, but well, we become products of our experiences, and I'm satisfied. There's things that I might have done differently, but by and large, I think that it's all worked out well.
There you go. No regrets.
That's right. I've always had a very positive, optimistic attitude, even when things were going bad, that it's not going to be like this forever.
Right.
Change it.
It's a good way to live by.
It's good to talk with you, Ben.
Well, thank you, Marvin, and all the best. The show is produced and engineered by myself, Ben, out of Denver, Colorado. Be sure to subscribe to our social media or wherever you consume content, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Big shout out to Mike Xavier. Thank you so much for letting us use your music as part of our show. Be sure to check him out as well on social media. And stay tuned for the next show.